Well, good afternoon almost. I am still here at Starbucks. And I thought, well, let's do something productive. And let's work on my video biography. So from this point on, I want to remind everybody that anything that is recorded in this video is my private information. So nothing is to be copied or edited for personal or professional use without my permission. So let's see, where did we leave off? I gave a basic introduction of myself. I introduced each of my parents. So today we are going to introduce you to my first foster mom. Her name was Leota Hill, and her husband was Gene Hale. They were each other's second marriage. They were both widowed and widowered when they met. Mama Leota's first husband, I believe he was in the military. I did not know him, but my father did. And he was in the military, and he gained tuberculosis, I believe, as a result of the war that he was in. And he left behind my foster mom, my foster brother, Ronald, and my foster sister, Sandy. And then she later married Gene, his first wife. I believe she was a nurse, I'm not sure. But she had developed brain cancer. And she passed away from the brain cancer. And she and Gene had, they had Daniel, they had Eunice, they had Jonathan. I believe that is all the 3 children that they had together. So they had, a blended family. And then together, Gene and Leota had one son named Mark. From there, they fostered Leota's nephews. But I was the first, I believe, non-biological foster child. She was the foster sister to my dad, and he chose her to become my foster mother because for whatever reason, either she would not or could not mentally or emotionally, my mother would not take care of me. And my father was also disabled, and so physically he could not take care of me. So I went to Leota's home when I was about 2 weeks old. I was in the hospital before that a few times because my mother wouldn't take care of me, and I guess I had become dehydrated and malnourished. She wasn't feeding me. And so I went from the hospital to live with my mother, Leota. I call her my heart mom. Even though she's in heaven, she's still my heart mom. And so I lived with her from the time I was 2 weeks old until I was about 6.5 years old. And I'm going to say this is probably the happiest part of the book that I'm sharing with you. It was also where I first learned about the Lord. My foster mom and my foster dad were both Christian. They both believed unless you were literally dying, you went to church. They were both very family oriented. Breaking bread for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. We were always encouraged to share with one another each other's day. And, a lot of families don't believe in talking at the table. And that's where we did most of our talking as a family, was at the table. Because most of the time you're most relaxed when you're sharing a meal together, right? And if we were fortunate enough, which, we still had to even earn that, at most we would watch an hour of TV. And usually it would be a few minutes before school in the morning, and maybe for a half hour or so in the evening before bed. Otherwise, we were playing table games because, again, it was good quality family time together. We would play Chutes and Ladder and, I don't know, all kinds of different games that were pretty much geared for all age levels because, like Mark and I, we were only 6 months apart and something like that. And then the other kids were, much older than us. And so if we weren't playing board games or card games together, we were working jigsaw puzzles. And I'm not talking about, little 10, 15 pieces. We're talking 500 or more pieces in a puzzle because there were like 9 of us. And or we would sometimes work on 2 different puzzles and break the family into different groups. So we love to do stuff like that. Or, arts and crafts, or we would set up camp in the backyard, and it was a really good family time. Not to say that there was never any discipline, and there was, but there wasn't a abuse, although I heard differently from their own kids later, which I don't know. I kind of, I don't know, because she still stayed in my life even after I left her home. And I always saw her as a very loving, caring mom. Strict, but still very loving and caring. But, then some people say, well, there's different rules for biological kids as there is foster kids. You're not allowed to spank them, or whatever. And it's not that I'm anti-spank. And I always told even my sister's children when they were growing up, and they are still getting told that sometimes in a joking manner now that they're in their 40s. God gave you a butt for 2 reasons. One, to sit down, and the other one to whoop when it needs it. And but I am very much against child abuse and domestic abuse. And we would go to the beach quite a bit. I'm going to say we probably went to Paris Lake because we were in Lapuene at the time. So I'm going to guess that was probably the closest place to go. But, I remember she was always very cautious of my brittle bone disease, which is osteogenesis imperfecta. It's a brittle bone disease, and you can learn more about my birth defect if you choose to. You can go to oif.org, oif.org, and that is the Osteogenesis Imperfecta Foundation. And from there you will learn that there are at least 8 different types of my birth defect. I only knew of 5 until I was in my mid-20s. And the lower the number, the more severe the birth defect is. I have type 3. My dad had type 3. I had a friend that when I was growing up, she was type 1. She was never able to sit up by herself. There was really a lot of things she never could do for herself. I'm told she never lived on her own. So I'm blessed that even through my struggles, I can still do quite a few things for myself. And when I was younger, I could do more. But I'm going to be 60. Yes, I'm going to be 60 on my next birthday. So, people with my birth defect also age differently than people of quote-unquote normal life. So, but I remember Mama Leota was my nurse. As a matter of fact, I was told she gave up being a nurse to become a foster mom when my dad asked her to take me in. And so, a little bit of background from Mama Leota. Her dad was a pastor of an all-black church. They were a white family. Her dad, from what I understand, he had become somewhat disabled as a teenager because he was swinging on a rope on a tire, and you know how they would swing back and forth over like a river, or you know like a pond or something like that, and they would drop themselves down in. Well, apparently this water was stagnant and it had Lyme disease, and the water went up in his nose, and it really caused him to get sick, where he could not walk after that, and he was sick for a few years, I believe. They had people from their church coming in and praying for him, and God just had not answered prayer yet. And I think at one time I was told that his parents kind of gave up hope, and they quit asking people to come to the house to pray for him. And all of a sudden, a black man showed up at their door, and he was wearing a white robe, and he had a white beard, mustache, and white hair. And nobody knew him. Nobody in town knew him. We found out later. Nobody heard of him. They said he spoke with an accent, like maybe from Jamaica or Africa or, who knows, Nigeria, maybe, I don't know. But nobody knew him. And so he came in, he knocked on their door, and they said, I'm here to pray for the sick boy. And, my grandfather's parents were still wanting to give hope. And so they let him in, even though they didn't know him. And I'm going to guess this was probably in, I don't know, maybe the 20s, 1920s. I don't know what year it was, to be honest with you. I know it was before my dad was born. So they let him in, and this black man came in, and he prayed for, they said, hours and hours. He sent everybody out of my grandfather's room, and he was in there for hours just praying for him. They said he was speaking in tongues, and I don't know, I don't really know a whole lot about that other than I was told that if you don't speak a certain language, God can interpret for you through the Spirit. So after like several hours, he came out of the room, and before that, my grandfather would be like all shriveled up in a fetus position, from what I was told. And all of a sudden, they would hear my grandfather, crying and screaming, and at first his parents wanted to go in and say, what is going on? But they just said, well, let's wait. And God was giving them peace to just wait. And so they went in there, and they could see that he did stretch out, back into, not completely stretched out, but not in the fetal position anymore either. And so he didn't get up and walk right away, but he was starting to regain the ability to speak, and he was able to somewhat move his limbs again. And within like 3 or 4 days, he was able to start sitting up, and gradually more productive in his healing than ever before. And from what I understand, he had been laying in that bed for a few years. And over time, I'm going to say it was like 6 months is what my dad told me, 6 months or a year. He did eventually get up out of that bed, and he walked for a long time, with like a cane or crutches. And I've been watching the Chosen series, and when I see little James, I believe it is little James in the series, walking with his walking stick, I think of Grandpa Cornell. And so he eventually did start walking, and more for a few years later, he was able to walk without the cane. Still, not normally, still with a limp and everything, but he was able to go back to walking normally. And so I guess God put it on his heart, since he was a black man that nobody knew. We kind of wonder if it was an angel, to be honest with you. But since a black man came and prayed over my grandfather, and he was the tool that God used to heal him, God put it on my grandfather's heart when he became a pastor, that he was to pastor a black church. And he was very welcomed by the community, which is, again, very surprising considering the times, and considering here we are in 2024, and sadly we still have to deal with so much racism, not just black and white, but pretty much across several cultures. So that's a little bit about my first foster family, and I'll probably be sharing more about them. I'll just say that I am very grateful to God that he placed me in that home as my first foster home. So I'm going to end this right now. There's going to be another video later introducing you more to that family and sharing you more of what life was like there. Until then, God bless you. Have a great day.